Rick Kammen in an April 2012 file image. Guantanamo Bay Naval Base, Cuba, after suicide bombers attacked the USS Cole 17 years ago. This young Navy SEAL from Wisconsin would have gladly risked his life on a mission to snatch someone suspected of plotting the attack that killed 17 U.S. sailors. Now, the former SEAL sits in the war court with the man accused of orchestrating the bombing that killed his shipmates. And Navy LT. Alaric Pete, 39, is navigating a different kind of treacherous assignment. Pete, a lawyer for just 5 years, is the lone attorney in court representing Saudi captive Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri, whose long-serving death penalty defender and 2 other civilian lawyers quit the case over a clandestine ethical conflict. So across 2 weeks of court hearings, Pete has answered the trial judge's instruction to litigate by arguing that until a new capital defender is found, the case cannot go on. When military attorneys are assigned to these cases, people just expect us to go along and roll over. And I'm not going to, Pete said in an interview at the end of a week in which the judge sentenced the Marine general overseeing the defense teams to 21 days confinement for letting al-Nashiri's civilian lawyers quit. Pete was one of the last military attorneys hired on the team led by Rick Kammen, the 71-year-old Capitol defense attorney from Indiana who for years led a constantly changing cast of military lawyers with a kangaroo pin on his lapel to express his contempt for the war court system. Their courtroom style is a study in contrast. Where Kammen wore a kangaroo pin, Pete wears the coveted trident of a SEAL, the elite Navy unit whose slogan is "The only easy day was yesterday." Where Kammen was confrontational in both words and attire, Pete has been nothing but courteous, even as he has explained again and again that he must sit mute alongside al-Nashiri, litigate no motions and question no witnesses until a qualified death penalty defense attorney arrives in court. Al-Nashiri, 52, is accused of orchestrating al-Qaeda's October 12, 2000, bombing of the Cole while it was on a resupply mission off Aden, Yemen. 2 men pulled alongside in an explosives-laden skiff, ostensibly to collect the ship's garbage, then blew themselves up. From left. LT. Alaric Pete on November 3, 2017, and Capitol Defense Attorney Rick Kammen on June 2, 2013, at Camp Justice, the U.S. Navy base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, in images approved for release by the U.S. military. Al-Nashiri was captured in Dubai in 2002 and held for 4 years in the CIA's black sites, where he was waterboarded, rectally abused and subjected to other torture techniques. He was first charged at Guantanamo in 2011, 5 years after his arrival. All those circumstances have caused delays in getting him to trial, after a clearly frustrated lead prosecutor Mark Miller fired off an invective against defense lawyers, accusing the general in charge of obstruction the civilians of adopting a scorched earth strategy, and calling Pete a potted plant defense. The soft-spoken Navy lieutenant responded with this: "What I am asking, the only reason I'm up here now, is to ask the courts, when they're looking at this on the record, to look deeply and without the hats of cynicism and understand that everybody here cares about justice and getting to the truth." Kammen spent years overtly salting the record with asides for a post-conviction appeal in civilian courts. With that remark, Pete did the same. The contrast doesn't end there. Kammen started practicing law 7 years before Pete was born in Wisconsin to a family of Belgian ancestry. Kammen says he has defended about 40 capital cases, none ending in a death sentence, and has never voluntarily left one before. Kammen handled his first capital case before Pete was in first grade. Pete has worked on none, but on one issue they are in agreement. Something secret has gone on at the prison to make it impossible for any defense attorney to trust in the confidentiality of privileged attorney-client conversations. And because it's classified, neither al-Nashiri nor the public can know precisely what it is. Pete says he has the same ethical conflict as the 3 lawyers who quit. He can't carry on confidential conversations with al-Nashiri, and can't provide the Saudi with a classified explanation. But he has stayed on the case in part because, as a military attorney, it took him longer to get an ethics opinion through Navy channels. By then, Kammen and fellow civilian defenders Rosa Eliadas and Mary Spears had all resigned. The only reason I think I can stay on right now is because I view my scope of representation as limited solely to getting him a learned counsel, and making sure that his rights aren't violated while he doesn't have learned counsel. Pete said, I am not representing him on substantive matters for the trial. Now, he said, he has a duty to represent al-Nashiri, not by arguing motions or filing new pleadings but by helping him find capital counsel. Only after that person is found, gets top-secret clearances, reads the record, and finds out about the classified confidentiality problem, might that attorney decide whether he or she is ethically bound to quit the case as well. The trial judge, Air Force Cole, Vance Spath, meantime has been hearing from witnesses on potential trial evidence basic litigation. As the judge sees it, that any lawyer with court-martial experience can handle. Death is different, says Pete. Last week he responded to every opportunity to argue or cross-examine witnesses by saying the defense has no position because no learned counsel is in court. Spath, who at one point considered holding Pete in contempt, replied on Friday, there is a position and a strategic decision from the defense and the defense community. 3 more military defense attorneys are waiting in the wings. 2 from the Air Force and another a Marine. None is death penalty qualified. But, to Spath's annoyance, Pete sits there alone. I think Colonel Spath, whom I have a lot of respect for, is in a bad position, Pete said, explaining that the manual for military commissions gives the Chief Defense Counsel authority to hire and fire. That authority exists in no other court in the United States. He said, Air Force Cole, Vance Spath, in other U.S. courts an attorney of record must go before a judge to be released from a case. Spath argues his power is the same. So much so that, after Marine Brig. Gen. John Baker, the Chief Defense Counsel for Military Commissions, refused to return Kammen and the other civilian attorneys to the case, the judge found the general in contempt of the war court and ordered him confined to his quarters in a trailer park behind the court for 21 days. A senior Pentagon official suspended that sentence after 48 hours. Pete got to the case in April and only got a clearance to begin seeing classified material in June. But he said that even while he was a junior lawyer representing sailors accused of housing allowance fraud, he followed Guantanamo's USS Cole case. Navy colleagues and mentors had served as defense attorneys at the military commissions. Tom Clancy novels, Michael Bay movies and a shadowy terrorist named Osama bin Laden drew him to the SEALs from high school. Pete said, by his account, he didn't really know anything about Al-Qaeda but from the news. But he was well aware of the audacious Feb. 26, 1993, First World Trade Center bombing and enlisted 4 years later. After 6 months of indoctrination and basic underwater demolition SEALs training, he was assigned to SEAL Team 2. I had joined the Navy because I thought there was this covert war on terror going on. He said, I thought it was clear. If they're willing to do that, they're not going to stop. So we must be fighting this war out there. That's a secret nobody knows about. And I wanted to be part of that. Thought that would be cool. He felt that even more so after the bombing of the USS Cole. I thought after the Cole happened that we were going to go to war and start doing the things I came in to do. We didn't. Not until after September 11th. Pete says he never saw combat as a SEAL. never fired a shot outside training, and his missions were mostly recons and the occasional snatch and grab in Kosovo, a hot area of commando activity at the time. He didn't know much about who the targets were, but says he believes they were mostly weapons smugglers who were ultimately let go. Had his team been ordered to snatch someone suspected of being the USS Cole bomber, Pete would have been happy to do it. He said, "Whoever did this killed my fellow sailors. I would have been eager to do it. I actually had to have a friend talk me down about my anger about the issue." He said, "Look, it's upsetting, but at the same time that's why we're here. That's why we wear the uniform. So we're the targets." Truth be told, he said, had a target ever been identified for a snatch and grab, that assignment would have no doubt gone to SEAL Team 6, the best of the best. But none was. It was only after he left the Navy, got a bachelor's degree at Old Dominion University and went on to study law at Georgetown that he began to think hard about defendants and due process. He said he studied law intending to become rich and pay for his degree, but at a Georgetown legal clinic he found his calling in criminal defense. If the Public Defender's Service for the District of Columbia had accepted his application, he said, he never would have turned to the Navy Judge Advocate General's Corps. In his 5 years as a naval officer, he has tried 15 cases to court-martial verdict. Probably the most serious crime he handled was a sailor accused of attempted murder. Pete, who got it reduced to battery, called it classic prosecution overcharging. But he says he's learned a lot from his clients about human struggle and consequences, and to distrust career prosecutors, whom he describes as often arrogant and smug. Attorney Navy Lt. Alaric Pete, with his SEAL trident topping his Navy uniform, at the U.S. Navy base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, on November 3, 2017. Soon after the 2012 Georgetown law graduate advised the USS Cole case judge that in the absence of an experienced death penalty defender, he was unqualified to argue motions or question witnesses in the capital trial of Saudi Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri. This photo was reviewed and approved for release by the U.S. military. Prosecutors tend to be so judgmental and dismissive of these human beings and think that people make out these well-thought-out, deliberate choices. It's just people living. Now the lone defense lawyer in court. He said his time as a SEAL is serving him well. "Sometimes I miss parts of it, but I found my calling as a criminal defense lawyer. Being in the teams taught him the paramount importance of disciplined and thorough preparation." It sounds nerdy, perhaps dull, not exactly fodder for an action thriller. But this is a man who points to his favorite part of the SEAL code as this: excel as warriors through discipline and innovation. Visit Miami Herald at www.miamiherald.com.